So we've got analyst Davey here, and as part of Goalie Week, we got to break down some different styles because every goalie's got their own unique way of doing things, but you can kind of group them together. Let's start with the super athletic, active guys. It's probably some of the funnest to watch.
I would say, no, you're right. And just to preface, no two goalies I've ever met are the same, both on the field or off. So
you got to be a little crazy to play the position.
Absolutely. I mean, if you enjoy 110-mile-an-hour rubber coming at you and hitting you in the shoulder, then it's for you. But you're right. There are plenty different types of goalies out there, and I've certainly come across in my career. And it certainly is a thing, especially as an offensive player, a shooter. You take notice of who's in the cage there and sort of the presence overall that they give off. And starting with those guys, you said those super athletic guys who, they really make it so they come out of the crease and do a lot of things. They affect the game in different ways. And guys that come to mind for me are Adam Gittleman and Blaze Reardon, who I think are we'll put under the same category, but they almost do it in different ways themselves. Gittleman's a guy, and specifically remembering playing against him, he not only will make a save and come out with the ball, he's looking for an opposing tackman to make contact with. He's
seeking it out.
He's seeking it out. Football player in high school. He's not satisfied unless he gets to make some contact. Another thing that they do really well is, when the attackmen are throwing the ball around, they'll come out of the net and intercept a lazy pass or a far pass. So make you think about things, a little bit more so than that. And, Blaze is a guy who, I think he can go coast to coast. We saw him do that.
Seen that.
In Albany, make a spin move. And, obviously we've documented very well that he plays indoor lacrosse as well. So
As a forward,
right? So you have to have incredible hands for the ability to do that. And I think that helps him in the goalie game as well. Outlet passes, it's all included. So it really is a type of player and type of impact that each goalie has on the game.
So that's one aspect of things. But at the end of the day, everybody's goal is, if you're a goalie, is to stop the ball.
Right.
But there are guys that, I don't know if it's specialized in it, but they're just, you call them ball stoppers.
Yeah,
why do you call them a ball stopper? And who's an example?
Exactly. It's great. They're ball stoppers. It's sort of it's your big time closer or something from the bullpen that's coming up. A lot of times they look the part. Big tall guys, and they stay on their line in their crease. They're very comfortable doing that, and they stop the ball. Like I said, it's sort of as obvious as you like to say it. But for a guy like say Dylan Ward, who's a big tall guy. He wears the sweatpants. To fill up the cage even more so. And he's a guy that I think is just able to keep the ball out of the net in a lot of different ways. You sometimes too for these tall guys, you think, all right, well, I'm going to get him low at the legs, but they somehow end up getting there before you do. You know what I mean? So I think it's sort of certainly a different style. Drew Adams is a guy that, being on a team with him too, I've seen him. He wears, pad here, pad. He's been hit so many times in so many different places, but he stops the ball with the best of them. And those guys are certainly incredibly valuable.
And it's interesting. You mentioned we talked about how two goalies are different. You got Drew Adams and Dylan Ward. You compare there as ball stoppers, but you got Dylan Ward who will come out and play the angles differently than a guy like Drew Adams. Everybody's got their own different style, but the idea behind how they do things is around the same.
Right, and I think that's a great point though. Is that what Dylan Ward does is come out and uses
takes the indoor way of thinking.
Right, and to me that it's like we're sort of talking about goalies, so you automatically sort of think of, all right, looking out on the field, but as a shooter, right, I'm looking at the net, and him taking those two steps out makes such a difference as a shooter. It means I can't see certain net, I can't see the last spot I like shooting at. So each style is unique to itself.
You talk about a guy like Dylan Ward. He's a big dude. We were talking to Matt DeLuca from Delaware.
Yeah.
He's 6'6",
right.
giant guys. But you don't have to be giant to play this position.
No.
You can take up a smaller part of the cage with your body, but make up for it.
Yes, you can. And the younger, smaller guys who not necessarily, I don't want to say small because they're not, but they don't fill up the 6x6 as much as some of the ball stoppers that we name. But they make up for it in other ways, just by being so active. Maybe it's with their feet, with their hands, with their stick. Two guys that come to mind for me are Kyle Bernlohr and Brian Phipps. I think those are two guys that they just make saves, especially in tight, in close. Maybe it's because I found myself shooting in tight against them so many times, but they do a great job putting pressure on the shooter. And it's those moments where you are inside, you have half a second to shoot, and they make you make the first move, and then they are fast enough with their hands to get where you're going before you do. So it's a very, very complex process that takes place in about half a second. But those guys are very elite with their hand speed.
I think it's so interesting because we had Kyle Bernlohr and Scotty Rogers who were on the same professional team for a while.
Yes.
And you look at the difference of body size between the two. You got Bernlohr, who almost looks like a stick, and then Scotty's going to take up a lot of room. But both are great goalies in their own right and do a lot of the same things well, and then have different ways that they excel. It's just so interesting to have such different body types be able to both be great at the same position.
Absolutely, and I was on that team, so we'd be in practice doing some drills, and they'd make a goalie switch. You'd be like, all right, hang on, we have to readjust what's going on.
You got lefty and righty too there.
Lefty, righty, tall, a little bit, smaller, but super quick and active. And you're right, and I think too that's a big reason why, as shooters and as coaches, we sort of talked about it, to each his own, obviously. But for me, I don't like to focus too much about who's in cage and what they do well and their style too much, because then you get in your own head and thinking about, where I have to go, or I have to outdo what he does so well in the net. So if a goalie has a shooter thinking, he's already got an advantage.
So along those lines, who's the guy you don't want to see?
That's a good point. Well, how about the type of?
All right, okay. Right? What type of goalie do you not like?
It's like I said, I try not to focus too much about who's in there. I'll say because of my play style, especially in the outdoor game, I find myself a lot of times 8 to 6 yards and in, trying to get those quick hitters. And those quick goalies, those small goalies in Bernlohr and Phipps, they're tough to deal with too. And I think a big reason is they don't lunge and then get themselves out of position. They make you make a fake to beat them, which can be tough when you have, like I said, only half a second to make something happen.
No better example of Bernlohr than in that national championship game against North Carolina we were talking about.
It's the only
earlier.
thing I think of every time. That's the first thing I think of when I think of Kyle Bernlohr, and it was just such a ridiculous save, but again, such a great example of his hand speed.
It's a forgotten about save. He matched sticks with Chris Cloutier in overtime, almost became a save that went down in Maryland history. Instead, Cloutier got the best of him at the end. There you go. Davey, appreciate it.
Got it.